distinguished guests in the audience, members of the media, and dear friends. I take immense pleasure to welcome you today to OTV's second annual convention, Foresight 2012. I extend a special and warm welcome to our guest speakers for the inaugural session, who have come all the way from Delhi to be a part of this convention. OTV has come a long way from being a cable channel to becoming Odisha's premier satellite current affairs and news channel. Today's convention is very special to us because this is only the second time that OTV has organized such a convention, and we hope that these humble beginnings will lead to much greater events in the future. The objective of the convention is to bring people from various fields to one platform to exchange ideas and views, and also to discuss leadership, growth, and good governance. The topic of today's inaugural session is "Corruption runs in a vicious circle, can Lokpal break it?" And to discuss this, we have with us today a very eminent panel. We have Srimati Renuka Chaudhary, Dr. Chandan Mitra, Shri Prabhu Chawla, and Dr. Kiran Bedi. One issue haunting us today is the economic inequity. We all know and understand that sustainable growth cannot happen without economic equity. And this brings us to the subject of corruption, which is sapping the confidence of the nation because of the inability or the unwillingness of the system to tackle it. Unlike the past 2 decades, when political unrest fed on issues like reservations and communalism, today the general mind space is occupied with the issue of corruption. We all understand that corruption is agnostic. We all know that corruption affects all of us to some degree. However, the big question is how and who will break this vicious circle. We have seen intense debates in Parliament and outside on some of the contentious provisions of the Lokpal Bill. On one hand, the civil society activism has ignited this issue and has also been a catalyst to keep the pressure on the political system to bring about reform. Yet, the job of actually enacting legislation is clearly in the realm of Parliament. On the other hand, Parliament has been log-jammed not only with this issue, but with a lot of other important legislation as well. Today's session may not be a debate, but we surely hope that our eminent panelists will dissect all these contentious issues of not only the Lokpal Bill, but also the Lok Yukta Bill. Before I move on to introduce our speakers for today's session, I would like to briefly talk about our second session, where we have speakers from the state, eminent panelists. And the topic for this second session is Khanijo Sampadar Durupyog Dai Kiye, misutilization of mineral resources, who's responsible. The mining sector is in the eye of a storm throughout the country. Mining benefits should accrue for development of the physical and social infrastructure while improving the livelihoods of people in the state, and especially people living in the mining districts. Are we adequately addressing this? Are we using our natural resources effectively in the development of our people? Who is responsible for this? Under the Constitution of India, the states are owners of the mineral rights and are entitled to royalty. Is the state getting adequate revenue from the mining sector? While the blame game goes on, the question in everyone's mind is, are we losing sight of the real issue? Is the narrow focus and vote bank politics, or vote bank politics of most parties, sidelining many of these important issues? To discuss this, we have a panel, eminent group of speakers today that will debate this issue. We have with us Shri Prafulla Ghadai, Senior BJD Leader, presently Finance Minister of Odisha, Shri Niranjan Patnaik, Odisha Pradesh Congress Committee President, Veteran Congress Leader and former Cabinet Minister, Shri Bijay Mahapatra, BJP National Executive Member and former Cabinet Minister, Shri B.K. Mohanty, former Director and of Mining and Geology, Odisha. I welcome you all to the program. I would now like to invite the speakers of our first session, Srimati Renuka Chaudhary, Dr. Chandan Mitra and Shri Prabhu Chawla to come on the dais. Dr. Bedi unfortunately is delayed. She was scheduled to come in last night, but due to some personal urgency, she changed her flight to this morning. But because of fog, this morning's flight is delayed. She should be arriving any minute. We will nevertheless start the session and she will join in as soon as she comes. May I request the speakers to come onto the dais. All of them are well known and obviously don't need any introduction, but sometimes stating the obvious is necessary. Let me start by introducing Dr. Chandan Mitra, who is going to be our first speaker today. Dr. Chandan Mitra is presently editor and managing director of the Pioneer newspaper in Delhi. He was nominated as a member of the Rajya Sabha during August 2003 to August 2009. He was elected to another term in the Rajya Sabha as a Bharatiya Janata Party MP from Madhya Pradesh. He was the executive editor with the Hindustan Times. He then left to join the Pioneer as editor and eventually bought control of the newspaper from the Thapar family in 1998. Srimati Renuka Chaudhary, senior Congress leader. Srimati Renuka Chaudhary was former Minister of State, independent charge of Ministry of Women and Child Development in the Government of India from January 2006 to May 2009. She entered politics in 1984. She was a member of Rajya Sabha for 2 consecutive terms from 1986 to 1989. She was also the Union Minister of State for Health and Family Welfare from 1997 to 98 in the cabinet of H.D. Devegowda. Shri Prabhu Chawla is the editorial director of the Chennai-based The New Indian Express. Before that, he was the editorial director of the India Today Group for 14 years. Mr. Chawla was awarded the Padma Bhushan by the Indian government in 2003. He's an authoritative voice in print and TV. We all know about it. We've heard him before. During his days with India Today Group, he hosted a famous talk show on Aaj Tak called Seedhi Baat. I welcome you all once again. With this, I would now request my colleague, OTV Chief Editor, Mr. Somijit Patnaik, to take charge of the session.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome you all. Our first speaker today will be Dr. Chandan Mitra. And Dr. Mitra will now speak. Thank you.
To begin with, very recently I came across this phenomenon called the Anna rate of corruption. The Anna rate of corruption, when one of my officers in my organization told me that the bribe for a particular job has doubled. I said, how come they were charging 500 rupees for this, which was routinely done, because without that no paper moves. He said, नहीं सर, वो कहते हैं कि ये अन्ना का आंदोलन के बाद रिस्क इतना बढ़ गया कि हमारी नौकरी जा सकती है. ये चारों तरफ सीसीटीवी लगे हुए हैं और कोई देख लिया, पकड़ लिया तो नौकरी चली जाएगी. तो इसीलिए they have doubled the rate of corruption everywhere. I recall the emergency. When I was an avid film goer and used to watch every Hindi movie that was released, when the emergency was imposed, suddenly the black rate, the rate for the black market, went up from 5 rupees to 8 rupees. So again, the question was risk. कि risk बढ़ गया, so it will increase. The third anecdote I will give you is many years ago, when I was researching for my thesis on Eastern UP and Bihar. Once I had to request the father of a fellow student in my college to help obtain a railway ticket from Patna to Calcutta. The ticket was done. His father was Vigilance Commissioner of Bihar. And I was told to go to the Patna railway station and collect the ticket. When I asked for the ticket at the counter, this person said, कुछ छोड़िएगा तभी ना बनेगा ticket. So I said, छोड़िएगा? क्या छोड़िएगा? बोले कुछ छोड़िए तो, टिकट ऐसे थोड़ी बन जाएगा. I said, आपको शायद मालूम नहीं है, मुझे विजिलेंस कमिश्नर साहब ने भेजा है यहाँ. बोला हाँ जी सब मालूम है, लेकिन बिना छोड़े तो टिकट बनेगा नहीं. So I had to part with 10 rupees those days. Prices were much less, corruption rates were much lower. But still I had to part with 10 rupees. So, you know, in a sense, I am also guilty. We have all, in some way or the other, maybe contributed to this, contributed to the culture, and created a scenario in which today we find it very, very difficult to get out of. The question, however, as you have rightly posed in the subject today, is that this vicious circle of corruption, can any individual or institution break this cycle? The obvious answer is that there is no single point solution to an issue of this magnitude. It is a much larger problem. It requires a multi-pronged approach. And various people have argued before me. I am not saying anything novel. But one Lokpal will not resolve the problem, just as one CVC, one CAG, and various other vigilance bodies have not been able to solve the problem overnight. Corruption is, as the cliche runs, a hydra-headed monster, and unless we adopt a very, very holistic approach to this, one piece of legislation or one institution will not solve it. The volume of corrupt money in this country, they say that the black money is 60% of our GDP. And a country that is growing so rapidly, whose GDP is increasing every year, which is expected to become the third largest economy in the world in another few years. Can you imagine 60% of that, nearly 2/3, equivalent of that is going to be underground money. Now this is something which cannot be allowed. So I believe that stronger anti-corruption institutions, Lokayukta in the states, Lokpal at the center, plus all the vigilance mechanisms that we already have in our system, this is essential as part of our battle to fight corruption. Along with that, there is the other issue of electoral malpractices. We all have seen how elections have become a source as well as generator of black money and corruption. I remember as a journalist, once I interviewed an RSP leader, Shri Tridib Chaudhary. Many of you would have heard of him. He was Member of Parliament from West Bengal and president of a party, little known party called the RSP. He told me that in 1952, he contested the election on a bicycle and spent 50 rupees on his entire campaign. 50 rupees. Today, you have to spend 50 rupees per second. Where does this money come from? And once a candidate spends that much money, the urgency to recover that money in the shortest possible time is also very, very strong. So when we talk of ending corruption and breaking the vicious circle of corruption, can it be done without appropriate electoral reforms? But here again, the issue is, where do you begin? Do you begin with tighter vigilance, with tighter curbs, like the Election Commission has tried to do ever since TN session? Do you start there and now go to ridiculous extremes like covering up elephants all over UP and these various things that we are seeing now? Now, do you go, and is this the answer? Or is there a problem which you have to tackle at the mindset? And I know that the moment you talk about the mindset, people say, what is so significant about the Indian mindset? Corruption is a phenomenon that exists in other countries as well. In China, serious corruption, electoral malpractices. In England, there was a time when MPs used to buy and sell seats. Here we have seen the phenomenon of Ayaram, Gayaram, and even now, when a party does not get a majority in the House, state or parliament, how much money changes hands in order to win a vote of confidence. We have seen many examples. I think the issue of corruption, therefore, we all have to apply our minds, and I would say the first step that has to be taken to start somewhere is to enact a strong and powerful Lokpal bill. The way Anna Hazare and his team drew the particularly young people, retired people and other people of the middle class across the country, that just shows the extent of frustration, the extent of anger. Maybe this group is unable to sustain the movement. Maybe they came out once, twice, they will come out thrice, 4 times, but beyond the point, there will be a sense of, deja vu, frustration, saying, what is the point? Nothing happens. So I believe that instead of tackling Anna Hazare and his team and the demand that has come from below, instead of calling them enemies, instead of saying that they are weakening the fabric of the nation, I believe they are strengthening the fabric of the nation. Now, look at the 2G scam. Half the people have been bailed out, and the remaining half will probably be bailed out. Now, this is at the trial court stage, at the high court stage. Now, it will go to Supreme Court. Who knows how long that will have? There will be appeals and this, that. And finally, you have a scenario in this country where an 86-year-old Sukhram is finally sentenced. When, it was almost a crime to live so long, because, had he lived a normal age of expectancy, then probably he would not have had to go to jail, because he should have gone to jail much earlier. Much earlier. So you have to have a system that works. A system that gives justice, and delivers justice on time. And for that, I believe the Lokpal is the first step. We have to take it. And an independent Lokpal is not possible unless the investigative machinery of the Lokpal remains under the government's administrative control. That's number one. I'm specifically referring to the CBI. Number two, India, as our constitution defines, is a union of states. It is a union. It is not a unitary system. There have been many attempts in the past to make India into a unitary system where everything is dictated by Delhi. I am afraid this is no longer acceptable to the states. They are not willing to listen to dictation from the states. And that is why you found the revolt in Parliament during the extended 3-day session in the last week of last year. All regional parties stood up jointly to say, you cannot impose this on us. We have the right to appoint our own mechanism of the Lokayukta. And mind you, there are Lokayuktas functioning very effectively in certain states. In Karnataka, my party's chief minister has had to step down on the basis of a Lokayukta report. You have a very strong Lokayukta bill just enacted in Uttarakhand. You have various kind of civil service guarantees and a Lokayukta provision now in Bihar. So, what we had proposed during the debate was, and which various other regional parties did, that you bring this Lokayukta provision, which is reflected in the sense of the House resolution of August, that you bring this Lokayukta provision under section 252.2. I'm afraid the government, in its stubbornness, or I don't know what fear they developed, they refused to accept that. And ultimately it was their own ally, the Trinamool Congress, which ensured the bill got defeated in the Rajya Sabha, or rather, the government did not risk the vote in Rajya Sabha. The ruling party in Odisha also took the same position. They wanted that autonomy on the issue of Lokayukta, which we in the BJP also very strongly believe that yes, there should be a certain autonomy. The states should implement, prepare a model law by all means, but you cannot impose it. So there are lots of ramifications in this bill, but unfortunately, I believe that in this time round, the government, either they developed cold feet, or more seriously, I believe the government had no intention of getting it passed this time. Now, having lost in the Lok Sabha, with many issues unresolved, issues that include, see, the independence and autonomy of the CBI, under whose administrative control would the CBI be? What is the selection panel, the modus of appointing the Lokpal panel, choosing the Lokpal. A panel of 5 in which the government is in a permanent majority of 3-2. Agreed, it may be our government tomorrow, at least I hope so, but in any case, this is wrong in principle. The government of the day should not have a permanent majority in the selection panel. So there were many such issues that were hanging fire, and in spite of that, the bill was pushed through in the Lok Sabha, where the government had the numbers. But obviously, when the bill came to the Rajya Sabha, there was, how much time do I have? Okay, I'm winding up. That there was a very serious problem. But I will just conclude by recalling the last half an hour or so of what happened in the Rajya Sabha on that fateful night of 29th December, during which we were all present. Rajya Sabha was so full. I have never seen it so full in my life, because everybody had given whips and MPs don't attend unless there is a whip on them. So, which is a very sad thing, but it's a reality. But in that scenario, we had the bizarre spectacle of people coming and tearing up the bill in the House. Names of speakers just kept getting added. And meanwhile, television was informing us from 7 o'clock in the evening that the bill will not get passed because at 12 o'clock the session has to end under the law and it cannot be extended. On that ground, we knew this was going to happen. But the government did not get the bill passed. I know it will be said that BJP had opposed. Yes, we had opposed. Our opposition was known from day one in the Lok Sabha also. But we said you bring the amendments. Bring the amendments, make the changes, make it a strong and effective Lokpal in the beginning, as the first step of this battle against corruption, which is a multi-pronged battle. But still, start. 42 years we have waited. But then on the last day, what happened was a shame and disgrace, I would say, to the institution of parliamentary democracy. And when some people in Team Anna or his supporters say that parliament has become irrelevant, we can make laws on the streets, which is absolutely unacceptable. Parliament is the only place where laws can be enacted. Only place to make laws, debate laws and pass them. But some people now say that why? You people don't work, you people don't act, there is constant political, wrestling matches. Why? Why should the parliament alone be there? Come to the people's court. It is very sad, because I believe that we have to all come together in this battle. Corruption is not something that affects only political parties. There are corrupting elements everywhere. In our political culture, in our various kind of systems, in the information network, everything has got corrupted, and we are losing some of the great values that our founding fathers, our freedom fighters had told us to emulate. So I believe that in this, let us all sink our political differences. Let us not try to score points. Let us come together first, and in the coming session enact a strong and effective Lokpal bill and give investigative powers free of government control, not a tame CBI which waxes and wanes with the governments of the day, which sends notices to chief ministers when chief ministers are difficult and withdraws notices when the chief minister starts playing ball. That system is not correct. I am not saying Lokpal alone will get rid of it, but we have to make this beginning, and I'll go back with the hope that at the end of this discussion there will be greater consensus and unanimity, not just among the political leadership, but also among the intellectual policy makers, opinion makers, for a strong and effective Lokpal to get implemented during the next session of Parliament. Thank you very much indeed.